1 billion people today have limited access to electricity that's unreliable, unaffordable, or unsafe. Another 1 billion people have no electricity at all. Most of them live in remote areas, so far off the electric grid that it won't be coming to them anytime soon. These are people like the Arhuaco, a tribal nation in northern Colombia. Most Arhuacos live on small family farms in the Sierra Nevada mountains. They come down once a week to trade goods and see friends. They've lived this way for many centuries, since before the Spanish arrived in Colombia. They grow their own food, make their own clothes, and still speak their own language, Iku. They've never had electricity, and still don't, except in a handful of villages like Sabana Crespo, where a couple of years ago, the Solar Electric Light Fund, or SELF, installed a solar microgrid. There are nearly 3 billion people today who still live with little or no energy. And what I want to know is how they'll finally get it.
So this is sort of what it was. That's the future.
That's the future.
I'm Scott Tinker, and I study energy. Come with me around the world to meet people and communities as they switch on.
This is the central array here, 12.5 kilowatts of solar power.
Wow.
It has now changed the lives of this community.
Yeah. How did you discover Sabana Crespo and get involved in this village?
Well, it all happened when Danilo Villafuña, a leader of the Arhuaco people, came to Washington, D.C. and requested our support to come in and bring solar power to his and several other villages here in the Sierra Nevada mountains of northern Colombia.
That is a remarkably rapid transformation for indigenous people to make, though, right? I mean,
It's true. Not everybody in the world wants this. We would never go and impose our solutions on a community that has not invited us. For example, they have asked us not to bring power to their homes.
so this array, this microgrid, is powering more of the community center type things.
Correct. This is all for community-based needs.
Of the many nonprofits building solar microgrids, Solar Electric Light Fund is one of the leaders. They've installed more than 100 in developing communities using an aid-based model, which has several key steps. First, a community requests the system. Then, a donor funds the equipment. Next, self-installs it and teaches the community to manage it. Finally, the community raises money to maintain or replace the system when needed. And that's the plan here, too. The solar microgrid powers lights in the school and health center and on the streets at night. It also helps power the community store and their coffee operations, the only crop they trade with outsiders. Both of these will help pay for replacement of the battery, solar panels, or other equipment as it wears out. Steve McCarney is SELF's project manager for Latin America.
This project had another component, and that has to do with sustainability.
We recognize that if we were to power everything with solar energy, it was going to take a lot. And we were trying to minimize the use of batteries.
My head's going to other options, renewable options. Of course, you got this beautiful river here.
Yeah,
Who
the
knows?
hydro was the technical solution, and the day we came in here, they said no hydro.
The elders of the village, the mamos, decided that it wasn't in conformity with some of the spiritual values that they hold sacred. Apparently, one of the intake pipes from the hydro plant was going to cut through sacred waters.
Huh.
And so they basically nixed the whole plan, and it forced us to reevaluate our solutions going forward.
So cultural components play pretty large in probably everything you've done around the world, I would think, in different ways.
Yeah, and especially with a group like the Arhuaco. They take their cultural values very seriously.
Yeah.
And if they say no, that's pretty much the final answer.
So the need is here. It can't be met by hydro under the current beliefs. But
Yeah.
everywhere in the 7 villages, solar was a reliable option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the size of, in terms of people, the human
Right.
population? We've seen a lot of folks coming in and out of this village. How many does it serve, if you
So
will?
the catchment area for this village is approximately 17,000 people.
17,000.
17,000 people.
So your 12.5 kilowatt microarray and some smaller ones around is actually servicing
Yeah.
a community of 17,000.
You've seen what a little bit of energy can do,
Yeah.
right? We think about a few watts or a few thousand watts in the United States. It's nothing,
Yeah.
right? But a few thousand watts of energy make all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
I wanted to visit one of the families living in the catchment area to see what life looks like without modern energy of any kind. The Arhuacos took me to the farm of one of their tribal elders.
Gracias.
He lives here with his wife and daughter, their husbands, and lots of grandkids.
All right. Nice to meet you.
Using farming methods passed down over centuries, the Arhuacos grow what they need.
Y ese es banano.
Banana.
Ajá.
And así?
Ajá.
Mhm.
Café.
Café. Café. Sí.
Y este la lana que se hace la mochila.
Oh, mochila.
Sí, para hacer esto.
Oh, yeah.
Lo que tiene él.
So beans, bananas,
Frijoles.
and coffee. So this feeds everybody. What is this? For grinding. All right.
Everything here is produced with manual labor.
Okay,
This press
let's get
is their
going.
only machine.
Put your back. All right. Oh. Woo. All right. What did we make? Sugar cane? Is good?
Pruébelo, pruébelo.
I'll try it. That's good. I wouldn't drink it every night, but it's pretty good. Gracias. Ay,
Cacao.
I think he's done this before. Oh, look at that.
Oh, este sí.
Oh, wow.
Eh,
That's beautiful.
comemos este.
Okay.
Quítale.
Okay. You eat it?
Eso. Está sabroso.
Mmm. That's good.
Ah,
Mmm. Very good.
This looks like a pretty good life, but it's a hard life. Infant mortality rate is 50%. Except for subsistence farming, there are few opportunities to do anything else. And so, many of their young people are leaving to look for work in the outside world. Arhuaco elders have realized that to keep their communities intact, they need electricity, but in a way that's appropriate for their culture. When it gets dark here, there's no light but fire, so I needed to leave too. I had a long walk ahead of me, and on it, I decided we would partner with Self to install a solar microgrid. Steve and his wife, Osi McCarney, an operations manager for Self in Colombia, took us to Gunchuqua, an Arhuaco village on the other side of the mountain. Here, my son Derek and Doug Ratcliffe, both from our own nonprofit, the Switch Energy Alliance, would go through an Arhuaco cleansing ritual in their sacred waters. Osi showed us how it's done. These are democratic societies led by elders like the one I'd met at his farm, and spiritual leaders called mamos.
Thank you for welcoming us to your village. And we appreciate very much the nice ceremony that we went through this morning. It's very meaningful to us, and we want to extend our respect back to you.
Ahora pueden, por ejemplo, podemos mirar, podemos ir al centro, podemos mirar eso, sí.
They
Pero
want
ya
to have a
para
communication with us about what are the reasons that we are here and what they will like for us to bring.
Y ahí es donde nosotros planteamos la situación o las necesidades de hacer una construcción conjunto, un entendimiento conjunto. Aquí decimos juntos, pero no revueltos. Cada quien en su suyo, en su espacio.
We are in a partnership with Self and Switch. So our interest is to understand your needs. And if you have a need for electricity in a way that we could help you, we would like to learn that. But only to the extent that you want it. And we would work with you
Y trabajaremos juntos con
to bring
ustedes.
electricity to your village and work with you to teach you how to maintain.
Here, as in Sabana Crespo, the Arhuacos decided they did not want electricity in their homes to preserve their traditional way of life. But they wanted lights and fans in the village meeting hall and communal kitchen and a street light in the square, all to encourage community gatherings. And they wanted a refrigerator in their store to sell cold drinks and popsicles, a real luxury here, which would help fund the upkeep of the solar microgrid. We promised to help provide it. But first, we needed someone to fund the equipment. Just 100 miles from the Arhuaco Tribal Reserve is the modern port city of Santa Marta, Colombia. We went there to an energy conference to try to find support for our solar installation. Our plan was to spread the message to as many people as we could.
All right. I love it when a plan comes together.
30 pounds of magnets.
All right, here we go. Some in Spanish. That's good.
To try to raise funds for the microgrid, we met with executives from Ecopetrol, the Colombia National Oil Company.
So we came to Ecuador and Colombia in January this year and partnered with Self to electrify part of a village. And we made a commitment to try to come back.
Okay. This is part of the responsibility of the companies who are involved in the energy industry to try to bring prosperity to those communities.
It's just the participation in something that's here, but global.
Yeah.
Things were looking good. He set us up with their Vice President of Sustainability.
In essence, let me understand, let me make sure I understand.
Sure.
What, in essence, what the product of your organization would be communications about a project with alternative sources of energy.
To begin.
A local village.
To start.
Help me to understand why an oil company would do this.
Mm-hmm.
And how will we benefit from it? I mean, yeah, those two questions I have.
Yeah. So oil companies like us, because we don't try to make anybody look like a winner and a loser. We try to make energy a winner.
Okay.
And feature it for all that it is. And at the end of the day, people walk away from our educational materials and say, I think I understand things that I never understood
Okay, let me
before.
ask you another question. And how will people know that we have participated? Because I have to go and tell people this story.
Yes.
Because in essence, Ecopetrol is a private company. We have shareholders. We have to explain every dime we spend. So we have to make sure we are very careful with that. That's why I have to think about it carefully and talk about it inside the company.
We'd love to work with you.
Thank you. No, I would too. Let me think about it a little more.
It was pretty apparent this wasn't going to happen. This is not their kind of energy, and the Arhuacos are not their customers. I understand their position, but still it was disappointing. But we weren't ready to give up. What other resources could we tap into? There were lots of excited young geologists at the conference. We asked a few of them if they might like to help with our solar microgrid project.
One of the things we'd like to talk about is whether or not younger people, you all count, are interested in that.
I think that it would be kind of something bad for those people, because I mean they've lived that way for hundreds of years, and that's the way they live.
Yeah.
So it depends on what the energy would be used for.
Right.
My observation when we were in the village with our walk-ins was, I agree. I think that the people there seemed content, you know? And it was interesting to me because I expected to come in and see, I didn't know what poverty was, but now they are seeing their young people leave the village. And one of their leaders said, we're losing sight of our culture and we need to do our best to teach our community about what it means to be Arhuacan. And we need energy in order to help build that.
Yeah. It's tough to say, is it a good thing or a bad thing? It's hard to qualify that. I mean, have you seen some of that, Myra?
I mean, if they have electricity there with solar panels, they will remain sustainable. I think it will bring quality to their life, actually.
If we come back here and can bring electricity to a village, is it something you'd like to join us and do?
Yes,
You'd like to come with us and do that?
For sure,
Certainly.
yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I would
Put on
really
the work
like to do
clothes
that.
with shovels and wrenches and wires in our hands, putting up solar panels. And
Good. I would really like to do that. Yes.
The older executives may not have been able to help, but these young professionals were ready to volunteer their time, and that inspired us to make it happen. It took us a year, but we finally organized and raised some funds for our return trip to Conchuco. People and equipment converged in the tiny village of Pueblo Bello, the end of the pavement, before the road heads into the jungle.
Uno, dos, tres, eso.
We asked our friends at REC Solar, who you may remember from our first film, Switch, to donate the solar panels.
Okay, I'm not doing anything, so I'll get out of the way.
Start peeling out one at a time.
Uno, dos, tres. Yay! Another one.
Está bien. Let's back it up a little so I can get my leg out.
The panels don't make electricity at night, which is when the Arhuacos need it most. And during the day, their output is inefficient in morning and evening, and intermittent if there's cloud cover. This means that every solar microgrid must have a large battery system capable of storing a few days' worth of energy. Since we had limited funding, my wife and I bought this one ourselves. The batteries were made in China, shipped to LA, trucked to Ohio for testing, then trucked again to Miami. There they joined the solar panels, which had made a similar trip from Singapore, for another boat ride to Barranquilla, Colombia. From there, they passed through 3 different trucks and finally into ours.
Right there, buddy. All right. Next.
Well, I guess we got over the first challenge. There'll be a few more.
To install the solar microgrid, our team of 17 people had made a long journey themselves. All our students and young professionals, Steve and Osi from Self, all of us from Switch were volunteers. As we made the 4-hour drive into the jungle, I was struck by how much energy in diesel fuel, jet fuel, and gasoline it had taken to get everything here. And how much money. The equipment and provisions cost more than $50,000. If we had to pay for the volunteers and their transportation, it could be over $100,000. A solar microgrid, it turns out, is a macro project. It would take a similar commitment of people and resources to bring a solar microgrid to any one of hundreds of thousands of rural villages around the world like Gunchukwa. But we would focus on just this one.